Emily stood in front of the dilapidated apartment building, the dim streetlights flickering above, casting eerie shadows on the crumbling walls. She shivered, not just from the cold autumn breeze, but from the feeling of dread that crept up her spine. This was the new beginning she had always dreamed of, a fresh start after the betrayal of her husband, but now she wasn't so sure. As she stepped through the creaking door, the musty smell of decay assaulted her senses. The hallway was dark, the only light coming from sporadically placed dim bulbs that barely illuminated the peeling wallpaper and cracked floor tiles. Emily's footsteps echoed ominously as she made her way to the apartment she had rented, her heart pounding in her chest. Opening the door, she was greeted by a wave of stale air and the sight of dust-covered furniture scattered around the room. The place looked like it hadn't been lived in for years, and Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She quickly dismissed the thought as paranoia and set about unpacking her belongings, determined to make this apartment feel like home. But as the days passed, strange things began to happen. Emily would wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of whispers echoing through the empty rooms, only to find no one there when she searched. Objects would inexplicably move from one place to another, doors would slam shut with no one around, and a feeling of dread seemed to permeate the very walls of the apartment. One night, as Emily lay in bed trying to sleep, she heard a soft scratching at the window. Ignoring it at first, she closed her eyes and tried to drift off, but the sound persisted, growing louder and more insistent. Finally, unable to ignore it any longer, she got up and crossed the room to the window, her heart pounding in her chest. What she saw outside made her blood run cold. A figure stood in the shadows, its face obscured by darkness, but its eyes glowed with an eerie light. It reached out a hand towards her, claw-like fingers scraping against the glass, and Emily screamed in terror, backing away from the window. From that night on, the haunting only grew worse. Emily would wake up to find claw marks on the walls, strange symbols etched into the floor in what looked like blood, and the feeling of being watched never left her. She tried to convince herself that it was just her imagination, that the stress of her failed marriage was playing tricks on her mind, but deep down she knew that something sinister inhabited the apartment with her. One evening, as Emily sat alone in the living room, a chill wind swept through the room, extinguishing the candles she had lit for comfort. In the darkness, she heard a whisper, a soft voice that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. "You cannot escape me, Emily," the voice murmured, sending a shiver down her spine. "I am bound to this place, and now so are you." Terror gripped her heart as she realized the truth. The apartment was haunted by a malevolent spirit, one that had latched onto her in her moment of vulnerability and now refused to let her go. She tried to leave, to escape the grasp of the entity that tormented her, but every time she tried to pack her things and go, something would happen to stop her, a door slamming shut, a gust of wind blowing out all the lights, a feeling of icy fingers closing around her throat. Desperate and alone, Emily knew she had to confront the spirit that haunted her if she ever wanted to be free. Gathering her courage, she stood in the center of the living room one night and called out to the entity that spoke her. "I know you're here," she said, her voice trembling but defiant. "Show yourself to me, and let me be free." For a moment, the room was silent, the only sound the pounding of Emily's heart in her chest. Then, the air grew cold, the shadows seemed to stretch and twist, and a figure emerged from the darkness. It was a specter, a ghostly figure with hollow eyes and a malevolent grin. It floated towards her, its form shimmering in the dim light, and Emily could feel the air grow heavy with its presence. She knew she had to act fast, had to banish the spirit from this place before it consumed her soul. With a cry of desperation, she recited an incantation she had found in an old book, words of power and protection that she hoped would drive the entity away. As she spoke, the specter shrieked in rage, its form contorting and twisting as if in pain. It clawed at the air, trying to reach her, but the words of the incantation held it at bay. And then, with a final burst of light, the spirit vanished, leaving Emily standing in the darkened room, her heart pounding in her chest. She had done it, she had freed herself from the malevolent entity that had haunted her for so long. As she stood there, catching her breath and trying to calm her racing heart, Emily knew that she had faced her greatest fear and emerged victorious. The apartment may have been haunted, the shadows may have held secrets darker than she could have imagined, But she had found the strength within herself to banish the darkness and find the light once more, and as she looked around at the empty room, feeling a sense of peace and liberation wash over her, Emily knew that she was finally free from the horrors that had tormented her in this place. With a smile of defiance, she stepped out into the night, leaving behind the echoes of the past and moving forward into a future filled with hope and possibility.